Okay, well, this is Dan Harris. I don't know if anybody has joined me yet, but if those of you who will be listening to this later on today, I'm going to go ahead and give a little intro here. And then looks like we've got, is it Brian? Have you joined us? I'm not hearing anything. Well, Brian, if you're on there, oh, there you go. You're going to bring up the webcam. How you doing, Brian? I can see you. I can't hear you. Well, that's okay as you work that out. I'm not sure anybody else has joined us yet, and I'm not sure how many will be joining us. The class only has 7 listed, and I got an email from, I think I'm hearing you now. Brian, can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
All right, good deal. Like I said, I think there's only 7 listed on our class list, and I believe one individual emailed me over the weekend, said she would not be in the class, so that puts us down to 6. And then, of course, obviously with schedules and conflicts, since you have the opportunity to listen to this later on during the day, again, I don't know. I hadn't heard back from anybody else who might be with. Brian, what campus are you through?
Salina.
Okay. I think that'll be the case for most of you. This is the first time I've done a fully online for Brown Mackie. And, I've been teaching. I teach out of the Kansas City Lenexa campus, which is one that is going to be kind of teach out. But I've been teaching ethics through there, and now they've asked me to take on some roles here to teach philosophy. I also teach online for Indiana Wesleyan, teach religion courses, and but that's a whole lot different. Even though we do a 5-week course there, just a whole different way of interacting. And this seems to have a lot more requirements, which I think is good, but it does put a lot more burden, I think, on you guys. I'm going to go ahead and go ahead.
You do that with Kansas Wesleyan?
No, with Indiana Wesleyan is who I'm.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead, I think here, I'm going to try to share my screen with everyone. So if that, well, here, yeah, I'll just put in everyone. So if that pops up in a little bit, you'll probably actually be able to see yourself again. But I'm going to, as I go through stuff, I'm going to, that way you can kind of see my screen. I'm going to go ahead and start because I've got a lot to go through, and if anybody else joins us during, so I'm going to put your face down there. Okay. Can you see my screen all right?
It's under, is it the EDCM Humanities 3100 Intro to Philosophy?
Yeah.
Is that what it should be doing?
It'd be my mouse right there is moving on the over Brown Mackie. All right. Yeah, and I don't
see that at all. Hold on.
Okay.
Let's see. I had me up there somehow, and I minimized it.
Well, I did that. I minimized you down. I'm not sure how to bring you back up, but.
Well, I did that too. I did the same thing. We must be doing the same stuff. I always have issues on this. It's only the second online class that I've had.
There, I've got you back up on my screen. But well, if you can't see my page, you have access to the class page. That's basically what I'm going to go over.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I can do that.
Pull that up and just go, and I'm just going to go through the basic stuff that we always cover, and then I do have a PowerPoint there, and the last half today I'll be doing an intro of just the first basically part of chapter 1, just to kind of.
How long are we going to do? I only have 30-minute lunch, so.
Okay. Well, I will get through the basic information right away, and then what I'll do is if you have to leave, the second half I'll be covering just sort of an overview of the first part of chapter 1, so you can come back later. And,
okay.
So just kind of let me know when you leave, and it's not a big deal. But basically, just real quick, if you've got the class page up there, this should look like the other class page you've had before. The syllabus is there, and the syllabus, of course, is just 20 pages of stuff that's on everybody's syllabus, and then, of course, the last, I think, 6 or 8 pages has our class schedule kind of extended out. But what I have done, actually, if you go down, if you're under that course home tab, and there's those syllabus, e-text, student resources, the one at the bottom, or not bottom, the one that is the second from the bottom as the schedule, that is a breakdown of the schedule without all the other junk. So if you just need to kind of see want to see an overview. Some people like to see the whole class. Some people go a week at a time. I think that document there is a page for each week. These online classes, obviously, and again, this is the first one I've taught, and it seems, when you first look at it, is a pretty intense schedule, since you have assignments you have to do every day. But we're supposed to look at it just like we would if you were in class, if you were actually attending a class 4 hours one day and 4 hours the other day, or 8, and then 4 hours 3 times a week, so you'd have 12 hours in class, and so we're supposed to give you the same amount of work that you would have done if you've been in class, but of course gives you a little flexibility. And so there's the syllabus, and then there's the class schedule. It's under HUM3100 class schedule. Your e-text should be there, which is the philosophical journey and interactive approach. And you'll be, obviously, each day you'll have different pages you'll need to read. And it doesn't hurt to look ahead. I don't know how you are when it comes to your speed of reading. But even if homework's listed on day 2 or day 3 or day 8, you want to read on ahead, that's perfectly fine, because it doesn't affect the schedule whatsoever. But there's your e-text. If you have any issues with the e-text, let me know. Of course, they've got tech support to help you, but hopefully everybody will have access to that without any issues. The student resources you see there is just the same as you would in any class. There's nothing there we need to go over. One you've done, now you said you have done one online class before, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you understand that online attendance basically means that you have to, from 12:01 a.m. this morning through midnight tonight, you have to, now your attendance here could kind of cover that, but actually to be certain, because I know how they're funny they are sometimes, is that there are 2 assignments, actually one specific one, discussion thread today, and you really need to log in and do that discussion thread to get your attendance for the day. The other thing, and this keep in mind, is on the class schedule, and when you're going down, if you want to go ahead, we can even jump ahead here and look at week 1 and look at day 1. You click on the day 1 tab. You should get, every time you click on the days tab, you should have the daily schedule. If it is in bold, then essentially you have basically what is your online class activity. And if it's in bold and there's a red, and I've tried to do this, and I hope I got them saved, and they're all there on every day. But for instance, at the very bottom, it has OCA discussion thread, Socrates and his quest for knowledge, due 11:59 p.m. Central Daylight Time on day 1. Not only is that your attendance for doing that, but of course you have to do that today. If it will, basically, if it's not done by midnight tonight, you'll be locked out. Now I can work with you. Something happens, you have technical issues, and I can always, or if you're just late, you want to beg for mercy and ask for some makeup work later that you've missed, I can always accept those on a different platform, but you won't get counted for attendance if you don't do at least one of the OCAs that actually requires an entry of an assignment. So, for instance, so when you go back up to that online attendance tab up above there, which has a whole bunch of information, you go down to the 7th paragraph that starts with for blended or online courses. So you're on online attendance requirement, and some of those aren't whole paragraphs, but basically go down to the 7th there's a new line. It says for blended or online courses, students must complete a required online academically related activity on the day of the scheduled online session, which begins at 12:01 a.m. and ends at midnight. The following online activities constitute academically related activities for blended courses, blended or online. And that would be a journal entry post, a Dropbox submission, a threaded post, taking a test or quiz, and so on and so forth. So your GoToMeeting doesn't necessarily cover your attendance, but we still take attendance. And I have to send that to the dean of each school every Monday morning. So you'll have both your regular attendance, which actually I do every morning. And so that, like for instance, for today, day one, your attendance will be based on doing the discussion thread. The journal entry, which is also part of today's schedule, can actually be done through the end of the current week. And remember, the schedules will be different next week, but this week, since we're starting on Tuesday, you have an assignment due in this class during a week, and it's not a daily requirement. So for instance, today, of course, we have the GoToMeeting. The second one on there is the journal post. And basically, it's kind of just an overview, kind of getting to know how familiar you are with philosophy, what you expect from this class. That assignment is not due today, but it must be completed by the end of week one, which for us this week is Friday night. So you actually have till Friday night to do the journal post. But if it was next week, you have till Thursday night. So all work for every week should be completed by Thursday midnight. I may from time to time make an exception if I feel that's needed, or if you have a family emergency, something comes up, I'm willing to do that. The important part, though, you have to remember is that you must do the one that is required. So for today, you must do Socrates and his quest for knowledge to get your attendance. Now, again, if somebody has technical issues, they can't get in, we can work with that. But if it's a situation where you just forget to do it, you might come back later and ask me to turn it in late, get some credit. I can do that, but you won't get your attendance. So I think that's pretty basic, but I just want to make sure we're very clear up front that they're not going to.
Are you keeping about? It looks like I'm kind of clicking through the days, and it looks like you're kind of keeping a steady 2 assignments or 2 turn-ins per day. Is that about right, you think?
It's about that. Sometimes it'll be just like, for instance, today, officially 1, but most times, yes, because we have to have 3 hours. You're supposed to do 3 hours of in-class activity every day. Sometimes it may depend on the length of an assignment. You might have 1, but there'll be, I would say you could expect 1 to 2 every day. And so
okay.
You really just got to, it's one of those things, if you're there and you keep on top of it, is it going to take you an hour to do each one of those? Probably not. But that's, the whole point is, you're there, you're making the effort, and everybody has a little bit different time. Most of the assignments, you can basically, that morning, again, reading is going to be the one thing for some people, because,
right.
For instance, 46 pages of reading for today. The main parts you're going to want to read, because the discussion thread is on Socrates, is you're going to want to go towards the middle to end of that chapter. I don't have the page numbers in front of me, and read his section. That's obviously going to be what you needed. We're going to cover what I'm going to cover in the second half, whether you listen to it later, is that I'm going to cover basically the first about 10 or 12 pages of the text. And so if I don't cover something, or there's an assignment, you want to get that reading done, that's why reading ahead might be beneficial. Most cases, the videos you watch on that day, and you do have a video lecture to watch today, I think in total it takes about an hour to watch that. That will also help you that'll kind of help you with just a general overview of, you wouldn't need that. But a lot of times the videos themselves you need to watch before you do the assignment. But I try to keep the assignments are contained for that day. The exceptions would be your 2 papers that are due at the end of week 2. So if we want to go ahead and jump to day 8, wherein you'll see a student research paper, and basically there's a explanation of your paper. And I'll kind of be talking, and I'll talk about this next Monday during our GoToMeeting, so we're not But there basically is something you should be working on all week leading up to it, because it is due by basically midnight on that Thursday. And then your final paper, if you go all the way to day 16, which is called the Capstone, student paper right there. There's another one again. You're not going to want to wait till the last day to prepare that paper, because and this is the case. So, but again, I'll kind of give you those reminders at the beginning of the week. Anything that's going to look like that's going to be an issue. But for today, again, we've got our meeting right now. Or for those who listen later, you've got your one online lecture that you should listen to, which again is going to be another intro to philosophy. I don't know the professor that gives that lecture. These were some of these videos were supplied to me through Salina. Others I have found. The guy does okay. He maybe not the most exciting lecturer, but that's not the point. The point is he's going to kind of cover some basic logic philosophy for you. But that's really just kind of give you an introduction. Let's just kind of look through tomorrow. Your assignments tomorrow, again, you've got some more reading to do. You've got about 35 or 6 pages of reading to do, and you do have an article. You should be able to, and anytime there's an article, I have tried to make sure, in case tomorrow's article is the ones who walk away from Amelius, and you should have a link, and it should be able to take you, and I put it right there. If, for whatever reason, the link doesn't work, then you should see, like, because it's at the top, it has Google search title. Just search that title through Google, but the link should take you right to the article. But again, there's a situation you've got. That's not a very long article. I think it's 4 or 5 pages. But again, that's something you can do tomorrow. You can do your class reading. You can do that. You then need to have a response to the article, and that is one of the 2 assignments tomorrow. So you basically can sit down, spend about, I would guess you could probably read that article in 30 minutes easily, but if you really want to kind of read through it carefully, 30 minutes, sit down, read the response or read the question you need to respond to, go to the tab where it says, Amelius critical response, read the question, respond to it. I will try my best, and again, it all depends on when you all put in your request. I'll try to get on there, and read your comments and then respond to them. Is not required that you respond back to me. I just want to let you know that I am looking at your work. Obviously, if you don't finish the assignment until midnight or right before midnight, I may not see it till the next day or whatever. But I will always try to get on there. And if you ever have any questions, though, if you have any questions on your assignments, and I've said this in the email I sent last week, send me a text. I've got my phone just like everybody else right there with me. Emails are I don't have my email for Brown Mackey synced up to my phone, and so I'd have to physically go on there and log in. But if you need something right away, send me a text. Now, if it's 11:30 at night, my phone does sit on my headboard, and it may vibrate. But if I'm asleep, you may not get your answer right away. But don't call. That's the one thing I'd ask. Don't, even if you think it's an emergency. If you've waited till the last minute, my wife would not appreciate that. So. Send me a text. If I can pick up the phone and see it, I've gotten texts late at night from students before. I don't mind. And if it's just me, it's not a big deal. But anyway, just so kind of respect that. But if you got a question, something's not working right, let me know. And again, if it's a technical issue, we'll make sure that we'll get, make sure you don't lose credit. And then again, for tomorrow, then you have another video to watch, the challenge of cultural relations. There's the lecture video right there in the tab. And then you've got a discussion thread. And so for tomorrow, yes, both those 2 assignments would be due tomorrow. You will notice too, I think this is it, I need to bring this up. Back up in the main tab under course home, where it has grade, scale, and breakdown. Just so you kind of, and I think this is good for everybody to look at right at the beginning. And you click on that and it'll open up a PDF. And basically the class has 690 points total. Now, the value of some of the journal posts and discussion threads are pretty small. The daily assignments, it's getting on there, it's being active. Those assignments are not asking you to do a lot, so it's not like they're going to be worth a ton. But you will find that basically most journal posts and discussion posts are 5 or 10 points. They're not going to make or break your grade. Now, if you don't do any of them over the whole period, over the whole 16 days of class, then it'll add up. But just kind of, check out what are the point values. How much time should I spend on it? Yeah, you've got to write a 500 to 700 word response tomorrow. But again, that is just a response of your own thoughts. You're not doing a research, so you can read the article, think about the question, and then just let your mind write. And I'm not requiring on anything with the exception of the 2 papers, the exception of the day 8 and the day 16. Nothing else has to be formatted. Okay. If I want you to write a response, even though it says response paper on Amelia's critical response paper, 500-700 words, you're basically writing a 2 to 3 page paper of your thoughts on what the question is and what you've read. And I'm not going to be that harsh if it comes to spelling or anything like that. I'm just looking for what's your response to that. The papers.
APA format on that.
So you do not have to do any formatting necessarily on those. The day 8.
Right, but on the research papers, day 8, day 16, is that APA format or MLA?
That is APA. And
okay.
one thing I've done for you, I think it's in 2 places, but I've found this because I do, like I said, I teach a lot. I teach online, and I have a lot of students. Some can write and some can't. In the doc sharing tab, which is along the top of your course page, the item that's the first one that comes up is an APA sample paper. And I don't know how good you are, but for anybody out there who hears this, that is one of the best tools right there. That sample paper comes from Purdue University. I think they have what's called OWL. They have one of the best writing websites for all the different, whether you use Arabian, MLA, APA, and that comes from them. It gives you everything you need. It shows you what the title page should look like, including the header. It shows you what the heading should look like when you go to page 2, what your abstract should look like. Actually, page 2 would be your abstract, and the 3rd page would be where you begin your paper. What your headings will look like, and if you've got different headings within your paper, it's everything you need, and so you're really without excuse. The one thing that I tell students when it comes to those papers, and I'll go over this next week, and it seems, even though I know they're doing out there, that when you're in Word, now, if you're working with a Mac, I can't help you here. You have to ask somebody else, or I'll have to try to get that information. But if you're working just with regular Word on an IBM machine, you basically make sure when you're in the header on your first page, if you click the thing that says first page header different, it says something like that. A lot of people don't do that, and then every header looks the same, and they said, well, I didn't know how to do it. There's a little thing that it says, first page different or something along that line. Click that, and make your first page header look one way, and you make the rest of the document look different. And that APA sample paper will give you all that information that you need right there. Okay, I just want to make sure we covered that. So then day 2, I said we've already kind of looked at that. You got your 2 assignments. Day 3 this week. Again, now a lot of these are similar. You've got your text reading, not as much. You've got a couple different videos, one on egoism and one on social contract theory. And here, very much encouraged that you watch those videos before you try to do it, because that's exactly what the topics of both the discussion and the essay quiz is going to cover. Now, when it does say quiz, almost all those quizzes, I think there's one exception, but they're almost all just essay quizzes. They're asking you to kind of like what you do in your paper, which you do, like on day 2's paper. I mean, you're relaying your thoughts. However, the quizzes are worth a few more points. I believe they're almost all, with a few exceptions, and you can look back at that chart I gave you. There are 40, if not 20, and again, it's not a huge number of points, but out of a total of 690, those will add up. So do take some time when you're doing the essay quiz. Don't just kind of throw a response in there. Sometimes on the discussions and on the journals, we're just kind of, some people get in a hurry and they write some stuff down, and I may not be, as strict there. But when it's on the essay quiz, when it's a quiz, you actually know that you've taken time, you've read through the class materials, looked at both videos. I need to see evidence of that. the essay quiz. So if I read your response to egoism and social contract, cultural relativism, exercise 3 there, and I can't see or tell that you've read the class materials or watched the videos, it's, you may not get all the points. So, I'm wanting to see evidence that you've done the work, and so just kind of keep that in mind, which I would expect you to. And don't feel like you're just giving me something just because I want it, but I think the idea is the whole process helps the whole situation. So watch the videos, do the reading, and then give me a response that is a little higher quality than your average discussion post and such there. So there, yeah. So 2 assignments for day 3 again, and then finally for this week, which is Friday, day 4. Again, you'll have some more reading there, a little bit longer reading. And then you have 2 lectures again, or 2 video or lectures. Sometimes we call them lectures, sometimes they're just video lectures. Sometimes they are people lecturing, sometimes they're a short video. Some are good, some are okay. I've tried to give you a good variety of those, but watch those, do the reading, and again, have a discussion thread and an essay quiz that will cover those topics as well. So that's pretty much how the first week and how most weeks will go. The last week we'll have fewer. You'll have more just kind of more quizzes, less maybe a discussion thread. But that's generally the pattern. I've taken a pattern that was given to me because I was just asked about 2 weeks ago to teach this. I've tweaked it a little bit. I've actually added some videos I think are a little bit better. Those come maybe more later in the week, but I have found some more entertaining. And but I love the study of philosophy, and I've been teaching ethics, and obviously I teach religion. But I just love the fact I love these topics, and I think if you spend the time and really, I hopefully we've all had supposed to have a prerequisite of having either covered ethics or other classes. So these terms should not be brand new. Most of them should be brand new to you, and I think you'll kind of enjoy our time together. So, well, Brian, it is about 12:30. So that's the general basic information. Did you have any other questions of me before you have to go?
Not really. You covered them pretty well.
All right. And again, like I said, don't hesitate. If you come up with something and you're working, you realize, oh, he didn't comment or I can't remember what he said, send me a text or send me an email. If it's not time sensitive, you can shoot me an email and I'll get back. So, yeah, so you can, if you need to leave, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead then for everybody, and for you, if you come back later, I'm going to go ahead with this second part, which is an overview. And so, Brian, if you got to take off, that's fine.
All right.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yep. Have a good one. Bye.
All right. Okay. And now for the second half, for the rest of you, I have it given for you when you're on day 1, GoToMeeting. And I have included at the very bottom an Intro to Philosophy PowerPoint. And you'll want to pull that up. Hopefully it works. I'm clicking on it right now, just like you would. And it's loading. It's not a huge one, so it shouldn't take more than mine loaded here in about 2 seconds, maybe 5. And it's just a short 10-slide PowerPoint. 11 actually, if you count the first page and the last page. So it's not a long one. And I'm going to spend the next 20 or 25 minutes kind of going through this. And this is just a general overview, much of the same. You're going to get this more extensive when you watch the online video lectures for today from the other gentleman. I can't think of his name right now. We'll be doing those. But this will kind of give you just some basic understanding. And hopefully, as I said, since you've all had a prerequisite, I was kind of hoping, maybe looking forward to see some of my ethics students taking this that I've had over the last couple of years, but that wasn't the case because I know exactly what they've gone over. But since I know that generally we all use the same text, but we can use different parts, and different professors want to use different parts. Hopefully you've kind of covered the same stuff that I have with my students, and are already familiar with this. But if you want to go ahead and start in that PowerPoint and go to slide 2, and one of the things I kind of like this as you read in the first part of your text, it talks about this philosophy and colds. I think it starts, I don't have the page numbers here, somewhere around the 4th or 5th page, maybe not even that far in. And I posed this question here on the slide. It says, why do I take, and this is actually what I do, why do I take 4,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day? It seems excessive, but of course, it's just one of those things that I believe is important. And one of the main reasons is that vitamin C is one of the best, and you can get it, obviously, like my picture there, you can get it naturally through other sources, and I actually have quite a bit of fruit a day, but I actually take, though, 4,000 milligrams actually of vitamin C. I keep it on my desk at work. When I get to work in the morning, I take it, and it does help prevent catching a cold. It keeps your immune system up. It protects you from, now I'm not a germaphobe at all, but I think there's certain things I can do that can kind of keep certain things away. I have I've had one cold that you would actually call a cold in the last 5 or 6 years since I started doing this. I used to teach high school for 13 years. I wish I'd have done this then, because you got every germ in the world comes in and out of schools, and especially in a building where we were, which was K through 12, a small little high school in Indiana. It was a elementary, middle school, high school, all in one building. So I got it all, and I was seemingly catching colds all the time. And about 6 or 7 years ago, my wife kind of suggested something about taking more vitamin C. I started doing it, and it helps me keep colds away. So why am I saying that? Because that's kind of what happens when you think about your views. Most of us don't sit around and think of, what are my philosophical views on this or that? We basically say, what do I think about this? And the problem is how we think has been, not the problem, it's not always a problem, but how we think has been influenced greatly by people around us. And or basically, if you want to say, the people that we have the most contact with, or whatever that may be. So as a slide there is the next slide, slide 3 says, the problem is that too often we acquire beliefs, and my GoToMeeting thing is in the way here. Okay. We acquire our ideas, beliefs, and values the way we catch a cold. Like a cold virus, these ideas, beliefs, and values are floating around in our environment, and we breathe them in without realizing it. And so what we hope this class will start you on is, it doesn't mean you're going to change your views. I'm not here to change your views. I guarantee, even though there's only going to be maybe 6 of us, 7 of us total in this class, we're all going to have sharply different views on different topics, and I wouldn't be surprised, I would be shocked if that wasn't the case. But what I want you to do is to at least know and understand where your views have come from. It's kind of like I also teach history. And I always tell people, we don't sit around necessarily and try to judge history because they lived at a different time and place. We can. There are obviously certain things you can judge. But I think what is important is looking at how ideas and thoughts and whatever have developed. And when you understand where it comes from, even if you don't agree with it, you're willing to kind of accept others having that belief, because you kind of see where it all came from. If that makes sense there. So as you read through this book, and as we go through this class, I hope, you're asked to note how each philosopher or philosophy addresses these 4 points. And that is, philosophy is search for self-understanding. You need to know yourself, why you understand the way you do. Where did this come from? Are these beliefs that I have based on things that are legitimate, illegitimate? Is it just because, my parent or whoever it was that raised me had these views and I've accepted them? And so, you kind of look at that. Also, it says philosophy is the love and the pursuit of wisdom. Now, I'm not asking you to become lovers of philosophy. I think that's what the one text we use is. It describes a philosopher as a lover of wisdom. I think it's just this idea that do you spend time thinking? Do you actually, we tend to not value thinking anymore. We tend to think that if you're sitting there and it doesn't look like you're doing anything, people don't think anything's being accomplished. But actually sitting down and thinking is very valuable. It's too bad with social media these days, more people don't stop and think before they post or whatever, because I'm very careful, even though I'm never going to post anything that seems to be that controversial. I always want to make sure. I don't want to look like an idiot. So I want to think, okay, do I really want to put this? Do I want to say this? And then I always check my spelling because, you know, I being a teacher and grades, things like that, I have to edit papers. I also edit as part of my other job. I want to make sure. But do you really sit around and think about the way you're thinking and your actions? Number 3 there, philosophy is asking of questions about the meaning of our basic concepts. Again, not only do we understand, start to learn where some of our ideas come from, but we need to start questioning. You know, are they legitimate? Do they make sense in the real world? Or are they just because some philosophical thoughts sound good. Some philosophies sound really good, but they don't work in the real world. And so that's one of the things that you need to think about. Is my belief system truly working in the real world? And number 4, searching for fundamental beliefs that are rationally justified. And again, rationally justified is just a fancy way to say, does it work in this world? Does it make sense? If I want to live this certain way, what can I expect when I encounter the world? You know, is it a fair, just way to live? And whatever that situation may be, it may not be always be a major deal, but it's just this idea of have I thought about my actions and the way I think about things before I let them completely rule my life? And that's kind of what philosophy tries to help you do. All right, so on the next slide then, it asks the question, what do philosophers study? And philosophy, I like this, it says, is unique in comparison to other areas of study, not because it thinks about different things, but because it thinks about things differently. You can look at, you've got people who are economists, and they, of course, work in whatever form of business they're in. They're looking at numbers, they're looking at trends, they're looking at what buyers are buying and what's, you know, and a price point at which they want to sell their products, whatever that may be. Philosophers will then look at economics as well, but they'll look at different things. They'll look at social impact. What's causing people to buy things more or less? Now, economists will look at that too, but sometimes philosophers will look deeper into the mindset. What is going on in society? What is it about this? What are they reacting to? Why are they reacting to it? If they are not buying a product, the economist may just say, well, let's stop selling that and sell something else. The philosopher might want to say, well, why is it they weren't buying that? Again, it's just looking at whatever area of life that is, and just kind of thinking about what's going on in the mind, not just what's going on with the actions of people. And so some of the things they look at, philosophers look at, the first one there, logic. Philosophers study how we ought to think, if we are to be rational, and seeks to clarify the good reasons for holding a belief. Now, when it says they want to study how we ought to think, that doesn't mean they're telling you how to think. What they're saying is, are you thinking in a way that is rational? Does it make sense? Can you, when you apply it to your life, does it make sense? Is it cause problems? You know, and if it causes problems, maybe you need to go back and rethink about it. It doesn't mean there's one way to do everything. It just means there may be the best way, or there may be a number of ways, but there are good ways and there are bad ways. And so using logic, thinking about it logically, rationally, and so logic is obviously very key, and that's why it's first here on our list here, because philosophy is mainly focused around, first and foremost, logic. A term that we'll be looking at in one of the later weeks, I don't have the schedule, I think it will be week 3, but yes, in week 3, we're going to talk about epistemology. Epistemology is a word that I'm very familiar with because of my studies in religion, but it's one of those words that you may not know the word, but I think you'll understand what it's looking for. It's when philosophers ask, what is knowledge? What is a fact? What is truth? You know, it's that old adage, I think, therefore I am. It's this idea that is there foundations to our thought process? Is there something in the world? And if you remember back from your ethics classes, hopefully your professors covered Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. And Plato, especially if you remember Plato, and he talked about his forms. Plato has said, look, there's something out there called justice. You can't see it, but it's there. You can't tell me it's not there, because universally humans experience what is fair and what is not fair. They don't necessarily say right and wrong, but they will say fair and not fair. What is just, which is another way of saying fair. It doesn't even mean have to be equal. And I think I mentioned that in the slide later on, but it's this idea that is there something shared by humans? Is there something that gives us some basis for our knowledge? And that's what epistemology talks about. Some people say no, and a lot of people in our world today say no. I don't agree with them, but we all have our different opinions, and we can look at it philosophically. And in week 3, we will spend time. You'll kind of see how that works and kind of see where you fall. But it says there, also talks about how could we know that something is true or not? Is there objective truth? Are all opinions relative? You're going to this week look at cultural relativity, and something that I am very interested in, because philosophically it's in my opinion, a poor philosophy, but so many people want to believe it, but when they try to put it into a rational philosophical outworking, it doesn't work well, and you'll kind of see that. And then the professor, or the guy who does the lecture, I think tomorrow, will kind of discuss that, and he'll give you some ways that he thinks he can get around it, but I see some holes in that as well. But that's for a later topic. But again, they're fundamental questions about nature and the source of knowledge, concepts of truth, and the objectivity or relativity of our beliefs are the concern of the theory of knowledge or epistemology. So that is what epistemology is. Next slide, you have metaphysics, another word or term you may not be real familiar with. And I believe on that same week, well, I'm not sure if we specifically, week 4, you'll be looking at some metaphysics. And this is where the philosopher asks, is physical reality all there is? The philosopher may also ask, are all mental events really brain events? Or is the mind something separate from the brain? There's this whole idea that, do we actually make decisions in this world? Or does everything just happen and we have no control over it? Some philosophers believe that. It's one of those things, and then of course they're gonna explain it in a way that makes you think, hey, they're onto something. But then you hear some of the other views, and you think, okay, where do I fall in this? And it's some interesting stuff. It is at least good brain exercise. If some of it seems a little ridiculous or a little out there, it does help you kind of think about things in ways that you hadn't before, and you kind of see their point, maybe sometimes what they're trying to say. But the philosopher also asks, is all behavior good or bad? Is it causally determined, or do we have some degree of genuine freedom that cannot be scientifically explained? Is there something beyond the brain, which some people call the mind or the soul? And if there is, how does that work? Or is it just a brain with chemical reactions? And obviously people have strong views on that as well. And finally, metaphysics is the area of philosophy concerned with fundamental questions about the nature of reality. And so we'll be exploring that in week 4. Philosophy of religion. I did notice that the professor who taught this class before completely skipped the chapter on religion. Whether he did not want to deal with it, whatever the case might be. We'll spend a little time on that because some of it does come into play. Some of the videos you watch will have some of that. I have put in there homework reading the chapter he skipped, so I do want you to look over that chapter, and because some of that stuff will obviously impact some of the views on some of the different topics. But again, philosophy of religion, the philosopher asks these questions: is there existence? Is the existence and nature of the universe self-explanatory, or does it need an explanation or a divine creator that lies outside it? How do we account for the order in the world that makes science possible? Is the evidence of design sufficient to prove a designer? The philosopher also asks, is there any rational way to believe in a good, all-powerful God who permits people might say the undeserving destruction by hurricanes or the suffering of innocent children? Or is the evidence of undeserving suffering an argument against such a God, and so on and so forth? And those are the common questions. And they're not really going to come up a lot in this class, but there will be some issues, and you can raise those if you feel the topic lends to it. And I have no problem responding to your questions in that area. And then finally, the last line that the philosopher asks, is faith opposed to reason, compatible with reason, or supported by reason, or is faith something that necessarily goes beyond reason? That is a question that kind of will all come up in some way, shape, or form, I think, next week when If I'm looking ahead here, I'm trying to remind myself exactly when this stuff falls. Yeah, you'll get that with some of the philosophers early next week. Maybe this week. I'm looking ahead here. Yeah, some of the end of this week and next week, some of those issues will kind of come up in a roundabout way without specifically necessarily dealing with religion, but they kind of all kind of fall in place there. Another area that's pretty important, obviously, if you've taken ethics up to this point, and so ethics is an issue that philosophers obviously deal with. Again, philosopher asks, are there any objectively correct ethical values, or are they all relative? Meaning, can we say something is right or wrong? And this is what I think will help you. Even though the book here says, how do we decide what is right or wrong? A lot of people have trouble with that term. I don't have a problem with it, but a lot of people do. So what I think it's, and because I have no problem with this either, why don't we ask the question, is it fair or unfair? Because it does not necessarily have to mean equality. I taught, like I said, I taught high school for 13 years. You did not, even though you had a set form of punishment for certain, if a student would do something, break some rule, but there were other things like within the class, expectations I would have as a teacher, and how I treated a student, one student, could be different than how I treat another student. It didn't mean I treated one fairly and the other unfairly. I figured out over time that certain students will respond to different things. I always tell the story. I had a student one time who was a great kid, and he messed up one time, and I can't even remember what he did. He didn't do it in my class, but he had to spend a week in school suspension. Now, there was a time when I had to spend 1 hour of my day as the monitor of the in-school suspension room. I hated it. Usually there were 8 or 10 kids in there, and the majority of them didn't want to be in class. They would rather be in there all day. They weren't going to do work no matter where they were, and they just wanted to sit in there and sleep or cause trouble. And but every now and then, somebody would get in there who truly didn't want to be there. They wanted to be out there with their friends. And I remember one such student, it was the worst week of his life. And I found out right then and there are some punishments that work well for some people as students and some that don't. And as an educator, shouldn't I be looking for what's going to impact the student, each student individually the best, and as a result, bring about the best result? And it's not always easy to do that in a public school, but there are ways you can treat and talk to students and work with them, and I'll try to do the same for any of you guys. Everybody has you guys have all different life activities going on, family emergencies or whatever, and so I can't be so harsh and say, this is the rule and that's going to be it. I'm going to treat each of you fairly the best I can with the knowledge I have. And to me, I think that's what people are asking for. So it's not always equality we're looking for. We're looking to be treated fairly. So we could say, am I treating everybody fair or unfair as opposed to right and wrong? And I think ethics gives us that room to do that. Political philosophy. The next one there, of course, obviously, if you're dealing with, we're in the middle of an election season, so we've got a lot of political philosophers out there asking questions like, what makes a government legitimate? What is justice? What is the proper extent of individual freedom? What are the limits of government authority? Is disobeying the law ever morally justified? And these are questions that go on every day. They go on in our court systems every day. You have different judges who believe differently, vastly differently than each other. And so we have an interesting system in this country. Typically it works well. But there are problems just like with any other system. But most of that comes down to the political philosophy that certain people have. The next slide has the first one is the philosophical foundations of other disciplines, meaning that philosophy is also basically, we like to say that philosophy is in many ways a big part of all disciplines. So for instance, the philosophy of art, or what's called aesthetics. Not only do people are artists, but people think about art. People think about when you look at a painting or a sculpture, whatever, you're not supposed to just look at maybe the beauty or the whatever it is that comes to your eyes immediately, but what's the thought process going on with what did the sculpture or what did the painter want you to see beyond just the picture? and that would be aesthetics. Philosophy of education, obviously, how people, I talked a little bit about that with how I used to deal with discipline with students. That's philosophy of education. Your philosophy of history, I'm in the process of writing my dissertation to get my doctorate, and I am writing essentially on the definition or different views of philosophy of history, how people view history and how, of course, that views causes them to view everything in their life. I'm not going to go into detail here on that, but that's something that interests me quite a bit. Philosophy of language. You say, well, what is that? Well, there's a lot going on with language, because language is more than just what you say. Language has a lot to it. There's gestures. There's what are we saying when we don't say something? And those are things that people look at, philosophers look at. Philosophy of law, which we kind of looked at, philosophy of mathematics, psychology, all these areas have philosophy that really goes as part of them. The next thing says, what is the practical value of philosophy? And the book sums it up as to ask whether philosophy is a useful activity. You must have made some previous philosophical assumptions about what is important in life. Basically, what the book is wanting to say to you is, in other words, unlike any other discipline, a person cannot criticize philosophy without having first engaged in philosophy. If the moment you think about something, you are a philosopher. Whether or not you have any great philosophical thoughts on any topic, just the fact that you've thought about it. Some of you may be listening to this around dinner time, and maybe you hadn't thought about maybe it hasn't been decided for you yet. You have to think about, what am I going to have for dinner? That thought process, as minuscule and as mundane as that may seem, is part of philosophy, because you're thinking, because you think, well, what do I want to have to eat? Well, it may depend on what you have. Or it may depend on, well, last time I ate that, I didn't feel real well. So you're using your experience, you're using your life experience, using all this stuff coming together to think about what you're going to do next, and that's philosophy. Now, some of us never spend a lot of time on it, others will spend more, but it is an important endeavor. Everybody's going to have a different level in which it's going to be important to them, but nonetheless, somebody will have, in some area of your life, you'll find some importance. And so finally, what is the practical value of philosophy? Meaning, what is my day-to-day? If I'm not going to be sitting around all day long thinking, I actually have to get out there and live. So it says the American Philosophical Association has identified what they believe are 4 important skills that we acquire in studying philosophy. General problem solving, even as basic as what I'm going to have for dinner. Okay, it's maybe not a big problem, but it's it's a choice. Okay, if you want to call it. The problem can be as simple as a choice. But there are other issues where you're going to have to deal with it. Should I drive 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, or should I stay pretty close to it? Well, what do there's a lot of things like that. Maybe is that going to bother me that I'm speeding, or am I more concerned that there might be a police car around the next curve? That's problem solving. Communication skills. Not only when we talk to people do we use words, but what words do we use? When we don't talk to somebody, what is that saying? How we talk to them. When you send an email, do you send it in all caps? And do you know, with the idea, what that means you are yelling at the person or whatever? Or do you use whatever emoji that will express that for you? How you communicate is something we need to sometimes think about, because unfortunately, in this electronic age, it's hard to get rid of. If you send somebody an email or put something on post somewhere, and even, of course, even Snapchat, which is supposed to go away, they have servers. All that stuff can be traced back, and most of it can be found. So how we communicate, we need to be really careful, especially if one day we realize maybe we should have said that, and I hope there's not a whole lot of evidence around. So those are things that you might need to think about. Persuasive powers. When I'm wanting to get somebody to go along with my point of view, I need to know not only how I think about something, but I need to know how they're thinking about it. I need to know what words I need to use so that they can that they'll see my side and maybe come along and join me. So persuasive powers, and even writing skills, because writing is kind of with communicating. It may be the way, it's going to be the main way that you all are going to express your ideas to me through your writing. And so you have to think about what you're going to write. And as I said, as I was going over the class materials, you may not have to think as hard about a discussion thread post as I expect you to on a quiz or your papers, but there is still some level of thinking there. you're not just going to put down words that have no coherence. You're going to put down words that are going to form a sentence. Sentences are going to form paragraphs, and hopefully those paragraphs are going to have thoughts that are coherent and that I understand, or at least I can kind of get your understanding out of it. And so there's that. So that is what we hope that you will gain from this class in a very quick overview of philosophy. And I hope I've done well, or best I can. If you need more on this intro topic, I basically taken a snapshot out of chapter 1, so just read through chapter 1. I think basically those first 10 or 15 pages real intently, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about here in these notes and get a little more information if need be, or if you have any other questions. And again, I've sent you in that email. If somebody out there did not receive an email from me, my email, my Brown Mackey email, gdharris@brownmackey, what's that full extension there? It's the same one you guys have. Give me 1 second and I'll have it here. I think actually, well, if you can pull up the class page, maybe I'll stick that on there later today. But yeah, when you send an email to me, I think it says brownmackey.edu, basically the same extension you would have. I'll put up an announcement later on today, kind of go over what I talked about here, and I'll go ahead and put my contact information up there as well. Again, hopefully you're all getting that stuff, and you have my, and I'll include my cell number again if you need to send me a text for whatever reason. But I'm up against my time here. Thank you guys you have joined me. Hopefully this recording went well and you'll be able to hear me sufficiently. I turned my volume all the way up, so hopefully that went well. And all right, so if you have any questions, send me a text, email me if it's not time sensitive. Make sure you get all the assignments that are due today in, and then be looking ahead to the week ahead, see what's coming so that you don't fall behind. And hopefully everything's going to go well over these next few weeks. All right, so I'm going to sign off now. And so hopefully you were able to hear this. If there were any problems, you could not hear me well, whatever, do let me know. And I will try to do better, obviously, next time, or fix whatever problem may be fixed. But I think it was working okay. All righty. Thank you, guys. Bye.